What if I told you that one dress, one photo, and one moment on a glossy Netflix set triggered one of the most unexpected, chaotic, and quietly furious reactions the luxury fashion world has seen in years? And not just behind closed doors, but in a way that insiders swear left a CEO pacing her office, tearing through sales reports, demanding an emergency conference call at dawn, and asking one question that no brand ever wants to utter. Why did we not control this? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Sounds dramatic, right? But the fashion world lives on drama. And sometimes, it takes one celebrity, wearing one gown, to push a brand right over the edge. So let's start with the dress. A $1,695 Galvan London gown. Smooth, sculpted, cinematic, designed to catch the light and sell fantasy. A dress meant to be a centerpiece, not a controversy. A dress crafted by a label known for elegant understatement, never for scandal. And yet, somehow, this particular dress became the headline. Not the Netflix promo, not the project behind it, not the Hollywood names attached, just the dress, and the woman wearing it. Because when Meghan Markle appeared in that new Netflix promo clip, styled in that gleaming, skin-skimming Galvan dress, the reaction wasn't what anyone expected. Fans didn't applaud the fashion. Critics didn't praise the craftsmanship. Social media didn't erupt with, "OMG, where can I buy this?" Instead, the internet did what it always does when Meghan enters the frame. It split into chaos. Within hours, not only had the dress gone viral, but a storm of accusations, screenshots, and whispered online comments swirled around it. The loudest claim? That the gown wasn't borrowed, wasn't purchased, wasn't authorized, but taken. A shocking accusation, an unsupported one, but one that spread like wildfire anyway. And in the luxury fashion world, perception is sometimes more powerful than proof. That's when the narrative shifted. Suddenly, people weren't asking how Netflix's promo looked. They were asking why Meghan Markle was wearing a Galvan gown, and why Galvan itself seemed completely blindsided by it. Because here's where things get interesting. Bright and early the next morning, when the promo had fully hit the internet, word started leaking from fashion insiders. Whispers that Galvan London's CEO, Catherine Holmgren, was furious. Not confused, not surprised, not shrug it off irritated. Furious. Why? Because instead of boosting Galvan's sales, as celebrity exposure typically does, Meghan's appearance allegedly had the opposite effect. A sudden dip, a noticeable downturn, a strange anti-endorsement phenomenon. One that only seems to happen with celebrities whose public narratives are more polarizing than polished. And if you've ever watched the fashion world long enough, you know brands obsess over image, over control, over consistency. A single misstep can cost them a season. A single association can cost them a reputation. And a single celebrity can cost them both. So what makes this moment so explosive? It's not just that Meghan wore the dress. It's that Galvan London reportedly didn't want her to, didn't approve it, didn't expect it, and allegedly didn't benefit from it. Imagine being the CEO waking up to that news. Your dress, your design, your brand, suddenly thrust into a global spotlight you never invited, all attached to narratives, scandals, and online battles you never signed up for. What would you do? Would you capitalize on the attention? Or would you panic as your sales dashboard plunges into red? Would you try to distance yourself quietly? Or would you go on the offensive? Those are the questions that seemed to boil inside Galvan's headquarters in the hours after the promo dropped. Because insiders claim that Catherine Holmgren didn't waste a single second. She was already calling for reports, pulling up the analytics, demanding to know, why did this happen? And who approved this? But here's the twist. No one could give her an answer. Because the dress, as some stylists suggested, wasn't part of any official pull list. No PR request, no brand outreach, no stylist partnership, nothing but a surprise appearance and a flurry of online accusations. And the accusations didn't stop. Comment sections filled with theories. Blog posts speculated wildly. Fashion insiders debated whether Meghan had borrowed the gown directly, purchased it anonymously, or, as some claimed, taken it from a venue without returning it. Again, no evidence. But evidence isn't what drives online chaos. Emotion does. Perception does. Narrative does. And that's where things started spiraling. Because as the dress soared across headlines, Galvan London's own numbers went downward. Website visits dipping, shopping cart abandonment rising, refund requests, strangely, increasing, email newsletter unsubscribes trickling in. It wasn't a collapse, but it was a tremor. And for a luxury brand, tremors are warnings. Now picture Catherine Holmgren opening that morning's preliminary sales report. Lines of red arrows, percentages slipping, customer comments questioning the brand's association with a figure who, for better or worse, stirs emotional extremes everywhere she goes. Imagine the frustration, the disbelief, the rising anger. Because the fashion world is fragile, public opinion is volatile, and Galvan London is not fast fashion. They rely on prestige, not controversy. They cultivate elegance, not noise. They depend on aspirational image, not tabloid coverage. So when Meghan Markle, a celebrity who divides audiences, wore their dress without any controlled partnership, it wasn't just unexpected, it was destabilizing. And that moment of destabilization, that instant shift from glamour to damage control, is what set off the chain reaction we're about to dive into. But before we go further, ask yourself, why would a brand CEO, someone accustomed to navigating influencers, Hollywood personalities, and red carpet politics, respond with such visible frustration? Why would one dress ignite this much behind-the-scenes tension? Why would Galvan feel the urge to distance itself in whispers that insiders swear were absolutely deliberate? Unless there was something bigger at play, some deeper frustration behind the scenes. Some pattern that professionals in the industry had noticed long before this Netflix promo ever dropped. Some lingering concern about celebrity unpredictability, unapproved styling choices, or PR liabilities that brands absolutely dread. And the more you look at the timeline, the more you feel the tension. The promo drops. The accusations swirl. The dress goes viral, not positively. The brand takes a hit. The CEO steps in. Whispers rise. Fashion circles buzz. And a once simple gown becomes the centerpiece of a storm no one expected. But why now? Why this dress? Why this moment? Because the fashion world in 2025 is more reactive than ever. Luxury brands survive on perception. They live and die by reputation. They don't want chaos. They want control. Careful partnerships. Curated exposure. Predictable outcomes. But Meghan Markle is unpredictable. Her presence alone is enough to tilt a narrative into extremes. Her clothing choices are analyzed, criticized, praised, mocked, dissected, often within minutes of going public. And when she wears a brand that didn't ask for the exposure, that's when things get messy. Now add in the accusation swirling online that she stole the $1,695 gown, a claim with no evidence. Yet one that spread fast because controversy spreads faster than facts. Suddenly, wearing the dress wasn't just a moment. It was a multiplier, a magnifier, a flashpoint. And Catherine Holmgren, measured, polished, reputable, reportedly had to make split-second decisions. Should she clarify? Should she stay silent? Should she act? Should she ignore the noise? Every choice had consequences. Every option carried risk. But one thing became clear as the hours passed. Galvan needed to regain control, and fast, because in the luxury world, silence isn't always golden. Sometimes silence sounds like guilt. Sometimes silence looks like complicity. And sometimes silence draws even more attention to the scandal you hoped would vanish. But this scandal wasn't vanishing. It was growing. And soon, the pressure around Galvan, from customers, investors, fashion analysts, and insiders, reached a point where something had to give. And that's where our story truly begins. Because in the hours following the scandal, something happened inside Galvan London's headquarters, something insiders still whisper about today. Something that shifted the brand's tone, strategy, and public posture. Something sparked not just by a dress, but by a deeper fear brewing behind the scenes. And what happened next? Well, that would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Have you ever seen a moment so carefully choreographed, so polished, so beautifully lit, and yet behind the scenes, it was quietly planting the seeds of a disaster no one involved could have anticipated? Because that's exactly what happened the day Meghan Markle stepped onto that Netflix set, slid into that gleaming $1,695 Galvan London gown, and delivered the 2-second clip that would ignite headlines, anger a CEO, spin a fashion house into panic, and send whispers rippling through Hollywood and London at the same time. It was the kind of moment that looks serene on the outside, but is violently unstable underneath, like a glass of champagne held too close to a flame. All it needed was movement, heat, a shift, one tiny spark, and Meghan, unknowingly or not, provided it. The promo shoot itself wasn't the source of chaos. That's the irony. By all accounts, it was smooth, efficient, professional. A perfectly standard Netflix production day with choreographed camera sweeps, soft backlighting, and assistants whispering into headsets. No drama, no tension, no hint that anything was even slightly off. You would have watched the raw footage and thought, this is harmless. This is clean. This is PR 101. So how did something so ordinary turn into a landmine? That's the question that keeps blowing people's minds. How did a single outfit, a dress that was supposed to be nothing more than a fashion choice, become the center of a storm? Let's rewind to the atmosphere on set. Meghan walked in with the kind of presence people always describe differently, depending on whether they adore her or distrust her. Some call it confidence. Others call it calculation. Some call it star power. Others call it a spotlight she carries whether she wants to or not. But that day, crew members noticed something else, something harder to categorize. A kind of anticipation. Like she knew the look she was about to unveil would make noise. Not positive noise. Not negative noise. Just noise. The kind she's used to. The kind she's learned to weaponize. The kind that follows her, haunts her, elevates her, or sinks her, depending on the day. And the dress, that shimmering Galvan piece, was the centerpiece of her look. But here's the twist. No one on set seemed to know where that dress came from. Normally with celebrity wardrobe, there's a paper trail, a stylist's pull sheet, publicist email threads, PR approvals, brand sign-offs. Luxury houses like Galvan don't just hand over a dress and say, have fun. They control the message. They monitor the exposure. They decide when, where, and how their designs appear. It's all a system, a machine. And yet on that day, according to whispers from production staff, the dress simply appeared. Think about that for a second. How does a luxury gown worth nearly $2,000 just appear on a Netflix set? How does a brand as meticulous as Galvan not even know their dress is part of a major streaming promo? Does that make sense to you? Or does it already feel like the first sign that something wasn't right? Because here's the contradiction that throws everything into chaos. Meghan looked stunning in the dress. Almost too stunning, too polished, too deliberate. Like this wasn't just wardrobe, it was a move, a message, a moment she wanted to imprint onto whatever narrative Netflix was crafting. And yet, the very brand behind that gown had no idea their design was about to be broadcast to millions. No one contacted them. No one coordinated with them. No one looped them in. Imagine being the CEO and finding out the same way everyone else did. Through social media posts you didn't approve, featuring your product in a context you never sanctioned. So the promo was filmed, edited, polished, approved, and released. And at first, the internet did what it always does, react. But the reaction wasn't predictable. It wasn't the typical fashion praise Meghan often gets from certain corners. It wasn't admiration. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't even neutral curiosity. Instead, something far more combustible started bubbling. Accusations that the dress wasn't loaned, wasn't purchased, wasn't authorized, and wasn't meant to be on Meghan in the first place. People began asking questions no celebrity wants attached to their name. How did she get it? Did she pay for it? Was it borrowed without permission? Was it taken from an event? Was it ever returned? And this is where the situation becomes explosive, because in the world of luxury fashion, where every appearance is tracked and every celebrity placement is managed, the mere suggestion of an unauthorized gown is enough to set off alarms. It doesn't matter whether the accusation is true. It doesn't matter whether it's exaggerated. It doesn't matter whether it started as a joke. What matters is that once it spreads, it sticks. Now let me ask you something directly. If you were a brand CEO, someone who had built a reputation on elegance, consistency, and controlled image, how would you react if your gown appeared unapproved on one of the most polarizing public figures alive? Would you shrug it off? Or would your pulse spike as you imagined the PR nightmare unfolding? Because while the internet was exploding with debate, memes, and speculation, something far more tense was happening behind the closed doors of Galvan London. Catherine Holmgren, the CEO, didn't find the promo exciting. She didn't feel honored. She wasn't celebrating Meghan's free press. Quite the opposite. Insiders say she was furious. Not because Meghan wore the dress. That could have been spun as a win. But because the association came with chaos, controversy, accusations, and a sudden sales dip that blindsided her team before they'd even finished their morning coffee. Let's talk about that dip, because this is where the story gets almost surreal. You know how celebrity exposure usually works. A celebrity wears a designer. The designer's website skyrockets with clicks, searches, purchases, sold-out tags. That's the formula. That's the whole point of dressing public figures. But with Meghan, the opposite happened. Analysts watched Galvan's numbers drop within hours of the promo release. Not catastrophically, but noticeably. Enough that the marketing team was reportedly scrambling for explanations. Enough that investors were messaging with concern. Enough that customer service was receiving comments like, "Not buying from a brand associated with this." Or did she really take that dress? Think about how bizarre that is. A celebrity wears your dress, and instead of surging brand appeal, your most loyal customers back away. This is the contradiction that rattled Galvan's leadership to their core. This wasn't publicity. This was damage. And the irony deepens. Because on set, according to whispers from crew members, Meghan believed she was delivering the perfect polished moment, an elegant, controlled, beautifully framed appearance in a luxury gown she no doubt assumed would photograph flawlessly. But in the luxury world, perception is everything. And when that perception turns negative, it doesn't matter how good you look. It matters what people believe. And the belief forming online was not flattering. Within hours, a rumor spread claiming Meghan had worn the dress without returning it. Another rumor claimed it belonged to a charity event. Another said she took it from a designer rack at a venue and never gave it back. None of it was confirmed. None of it was factual. But the problem is that in controversies involving high-profile figures, the truth is always the quietest voice in the room. Meanwhile, Galvan London began noticing social media tags linking them to accusations they had never invited. Not soft tags, not fun fashion tags, harsh ones, accusatory ones. Comments questioning their ethics, not Meghan's. Comments wondering if Galvan had enabled something. Comments criticizing the brand, even though the brand had no involvement in any of this at all. Do you see how dangerous perception can be? Galvan didn't just lose control. They were losing their narrative, their authority, and their brand protection in real time. And all from one dress. So what happened next on Galvan's side? That's where the story branches into the private world. The world of internal emails, sudden meetings, frantic PR calls, and a CEO whose frustration was reportedly escalating by the minute. Insiders claim Catherine Holmgren immediately ordered the team to investigate how the dress resurfaced on Meghan without the brand's knowledge. Some say she demanded names. Others say she demanded explanations. But one thing is clear. The moment she realized the promo was real, public, and spreading, the temperature inside Galvan's office rose sharply. Now the interesting thing is this. Even though this moment looked small, even harmless on the surface, fashion insiders swear this was the turning point. This was the moment Galvan realized they weren't dealing with a simple PR hiccup. They were dealing with a situation that could spiral into a full-blown brand crisis if not handled correctly. Picture the rest of that day at Galvan headquarters. Phones ringing, emails flooding in, PR staff monitoring hashtags, analysts comparing data from the previous week, Catherine reading and rereading the sales reports, the team debating whether to make a statement or pretend nothing happened. All because of a dress that no one expected to see on Meghan at all. And what if I told you this was only the beginning? That the storm hadn't even formed its full shape yet? That the real shock hadn't hit? That what came next, quietly, unexpectedly, and from a completely different source, would push Catherine Holmgren from concerned to furious, from upset to strategically aggressive? Because deep inside the fashion world, something else was circulating. Something that would take this situation from a simple wardrobe controversy to a full-blown internal crisis. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt the air shift, heavy, electric, filled with tension so sharp it almost hums? That's what insiders say the atmosphere was like inside Galvan London's headquarters the morning after the Netflix promo went live. While social media spiraled into debates, accusations, and fashion autopsies, Galvan's offices were dealing with something far more serious, the kind of internal panic only luxury brands understand. Because when elegance is your business model and reputation is your oxygen, the slightest hint of unsanctioned controversy feels like smoke seeping into the walls. And once smoke gets in, it's almost impossible to get out. So imagine this: a chilly London morning, the kind where the city feels muffled and slow. Employees walk in with coffees, scarves still wrapped, ready for a normal workday. They expect emails, fittings, production updates. They do not expect a crisis. They do not expect their CEO to be pacing the office before most of them have even clocked in. And they certainly do not expect to find out that a dress from their latest line, a dress they weren't even tracking, is suddenly plastered across Netflix and trending on social media for all the wrong reasons. But that's exactly the scene that unfolded. Catherine Holmgren wasn't the kind of CEO who raised her voice often. In fact, people who've worked with her describe her as calm, measured, always in control. A strategist, not a reactor. A planner, not a panicker. So when she started calling the team into the conference room at 7:45 a.m., a time she normally spent reviewing reports alone, employees immediately knew something was off. Something was wrong. Something big was brewing. And this is the emotional contradiction that set the tone for the entire day. Outside the building, the world was calm. Inside it, a storm was building, one with the potential to tear through the brand if it wasn't contained. When the first group of staff entered the conference room, they found Catherine standing at the end of the long glass table, laptop open, promo clip paused at one specific frame. Meghan Markle in the $1,695 Galvan gown, angled toward the light with a soft, almost ethereal glow. But instead of admiring the image, Catherine was staring at it like it was a crime scene photo. The room stayed silent for a moment, the kind of silence that feels intentional. Then she spoke. "Why was I not informed about this?" Those words, insiders say, snapped the room straight into crisis mode. Because when a CEO starts a meeting with "why was I not informed," you already know there are no correct answers. Only explanations. And none of them are going to sound good. One employee tried to speak up, insisting they had no idea Meghan was planning to wear the dress. Another pointed out they never received a stylist request. A third quietly mentioned they hadn't even seen that specific gown move through the celebrity poll log. But the more they spoke, the more frustrated Catherine became. Not at them, but at the situation itself. At the loss of control. At the fact that her brand was now tied to a controversy she didn't choose. Let me ask you something. Imagine you're in her position. You've built a luxury brand on meticulous planning, impeccable relationships, and controlled exposure. Suddenly, one celebrity appearance, unauthorized, unexpected, unexplained, threatens to taint your entire aesthetic. Wouldn't you feel the same surge of frustration? Wouldn't you feel the anxiety of losing control over the brand image you've protected for years? Because that's what was happening in real time. The staff tried to reassure her. They suggested it might blow over. They suggested the exposure could be spun positively. They suggested the brand might benefit in the long run. Catherine wasn't buying it. She clicked to the next slide in her presentation, a screenshot of Galvan's sales dashboard. It was like watching a heart monitor flatline in slow motion. A dip, not free-falling, but undeniable. Sales down, traffic down, conversion down, customer messages up, but not the good kind. She highlighted one comment that had come in overnight. Disappointed to see Galvan associated with this drama. Then another. Did Meghan take that dress without permission? Then another. Why would Galvan support this kind of behavior? The room went silent again, heavier than before. These weren't trolls. These were Galvan's own customers. Loyal ones. The ones who buy dresses, not argue about them online. The ones luxury brands depend on for survival. The irony? Meghan wearing the gown should have boosted these numbers. But instead, it damaged them. And that's when the emotional temperature in the room flipped from confusion to urgency. Catherine leaned forward, tapping the table with the kind of controlled intensity that lets you know someone is holding back much stronger emotions. She asked a question that made the whole team shift in their seats. Where did she get the dress? Not, why is she wearing it? Not, is it a good look for us? Not, how can we control the narrative? No, just one question. One that none of them could answer. Because the truth was, they didn't know. Wardrobe logs showed no record of the loan. Customer logs showed no recent purchase. No stylist contact. No PR communication. No approval. Nothing. It was as if the dress had simply teleported into the Netflix promo. And that's when another contradiction entered the room. The kind that makes situations 10 times worse. Someone pointed out that Meghan often works with stylists who pull directly from stores, private collections, and designers without formal partnerships. That sometimes, celebrities do buy pieces quietly without revealing them to the brand. That this could simply be a case of an untracked purchase. Catherine didn't accept that explanation. She asked again, this time choosing her words more carefully. Are we absolutely sure this was not taken from a venue? Was it lent at an event we didn't document? Did someone fail to return it? Did it go missing? The team exchanged glances. Because if you're a fashion house, the last thing you want associated with your brand is the notion that your gowns can just go missing. That's image poison. That's reputation rot. And in the luxury world, perception is reality. Here's where the internal panic escalated. Someone pulled up the dress's stock record and noticed something odd. A discrepancy. A number that didn't quite match the inventory sheets. A detail that seemed strange enough to raise eyebrows. The dress wasn't marked as sold. The dress wasn't marked as loaned. The dress wasn't marked as sample. The dress was simply missing. Missing. That word alone was enough to send shockwaves through the room. Because missing dress sounds like controversy. Sounds like scandal. Sounds like negligence. Sounds like exactly the type of narrative that could turn a fashion house into a punchline. If the media got hold of it. And with Meghan involved, media would devour it. Catherine's frustration shifted into something sharper. A quiet, controlled anger. The kind that comes from knowing the brand's reputation had slipped out of her hands, even if only for a moment. She ordered her team to track every movement of that dress, audit inventory logs, check stylist lists from the past year, review event returns, look at footage from past shows, reach out to internal contacts. When a CEO activates an emergency trace on a single dress, you know it's serious. But here's where the emotional twist comes in. The staff, while scrambling, couldn't shake the surreal feeling that they were dealing with something far bigger than a misplaced garment. Something that felt more like a collision between worlds, the unpredictable celebrity sphere and the reputation-tight luxury sphere. Two ecosystems with completely different rules, language, and consequences. And Meghan had just walked straight through the middle of them. Meanwhile, outside the conference room, employees whispered, "Did she really take it? Was it borrowed? Was it a miscommunication? Why is this blowing up so fast? Is the CEO going to make a statement? What if the rumors get worse?" Rumors always get worse, especially when the internet smells a story. And the story was growing. Fashion blogs were posting screenshots of Meghan in the dress. Reddit threads were speculating about how she acquired it. Comment sections were flooding with theories. TikTok creators were making videos about it. And Twitter was doing what Twitter always does, turning speculation into trending topics. Inside Galvan, the tension reached a boiling point. Catherine reportedly ordered every department head back into the conference room for a second round of emergency discussions. This time, she wasn't just asking questions, she was giving instructions. It was time for a strategy, time for a narrative, time for damage control before the damage grew too large to contain. But before the team could finalize their plan, something unexpected happened. Something that shifted the entire tone of the crisis. Something that came from outside Galvan, not inside. An email. One that was forwarded from a longtime industry contact. One that contained a message Galvan absolutely was not prepared for. One that would escalate the situation from internal concern to full-blown alarm. And what was in that email? Well, what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Have you ever watched a situation go from concerning to catastrophic in a single morning? The kind of shift where you can literally feel the ground move beneath you, even if the building remains still? That's exactly what happened inside Galvan London the moment Catherine Holmgren opened that forwarded email. Because the message inside wasn't just surprising. It wasn't just frustrating. It wasn't just worrying. It was the spark that ignited the data-driven meltdown that would push this entire scandal from annoying to unavoidable. And the most chilling part? The email didn't even contain drama. It contained numbers. Cold, hard, unemotional. Numbers that told a story no brand CEO ever wants to read. But let's rewind a few minutes to set the emotional stage. Galvan's team was already tense. The missing dress, the online accusations, Meghan's unexpected appearance in a gown the brand didn't authorize, the sudden dip in sales, the sense that the narrative was slipping out of their hands. It was enough to make any luxury fashion brand uneasy. But what no one expected was that outside forces, industry analysts, retail partners, and even loyal customers, were already quietly reacting. The promo hadn't even hit the 24-hour mark, yet the ripple effects were speeding toward Galvan faster than anyone anticipated. So when Catherine opened that email, she wasn't expecting the digital equivalent of a punch to the stomach. The subject line alone was enough to make her pulse spike. Concerning overnight performance indicators, immediate attention required. She clicked it. And suddenly, the entire day took a darker turn. The email came from an external retail partner, someone Galvan trusted, someone who handled analytics for several luxury brands. Their tone was polite, factual, almost sterile. But the content? That was anything but sterile. It detailed hour-by-hour shifts in consumer behavior, and every line was a warning. Traffic drop, 27% since the promo. Cart abandonment, up 41%. Product page exits, up 38%. Return requests, up 22%. Email unsubscribe rate, up 31%. Negative sentiment ratio, exploding. Let's pause here for a moment. Take in those numbers. Because when a brand sees changes like that in less than a day, it's not just a dip, it's a shock, a jolt, a sign of consumer rejection. And the kind of emotional rejection that doesn't come from random coincidence, but from something people actively noticed and disliked. Now, imagine being a CEO reading that. Imagine looking around the conference table at your staff while your stomach sinks. Imagine having to pretend you're in control while your brand's entire reputation is quietly slipping through your fingers. And imagine that all of it, every percentage, every drop, every negative shift, is happening because a celebrity wore your dress without your permission. That's not just frustrating. That's devastating. Catherine read the email 3 times. Not because she didn't understand it, but because she couldn't believe what she was seeing. This wasn't just about Meghan wearing a dress. This was about brand trust collapsing in real time. And trust is currency. Trust is everything. Trust is the lifeline of luxury brands. And right now, Galvan's lifeline was fraying. She finally looked up at her team and asked the question no CEO ever wants to ask. Is this the beginning of a trend? The room froze. Because when numbers fall this fast, the only thing worse than the drop is the possibility that the drop is only the beginning. One of the analysts cleared their throat and admitted something that made everyone's skin prickle. We checked competitor data, and they're seeing a spike in traffic. Some customers are literally switching brands. Switching. Walking away. Choosing someone else. That's the worst fear of any luxury brand. Because luxury is built on emotional loyalty. The idea that buyers believe in you, trust you, feel aligned with your identity. But when controversy hits, especially involving a polarizing figure, that emotional loyalty can turn into emotional rejection with stunning speed. Still, none of this fully explains why the dip was happening. Why would Meghan, someone who has driven massive fashion sales before, suddenly cause the opposite effect? That's the contradiction that baffled the room. Why did her wearing the dress make customers pull away instead of lean in? Why did people associate the gown with negative behavior before any facts were confirmed? Why were buyers reacting emotionally instead of rationally? Because luxury customers don't want noise. They want aspiration, elegance, control, clean storytelling. But Meghan, whether she intends to or not, brings noise. A lot of it. The kind that divides people. The kind that overshadows the clothing itself. So when the accusations surfaced, did she steal that dress? Customers weren't just judging Meghan. They were judging Galvan by association. They were asking questions like, did she get this through proper channels? What kind of brand allows its dresses to go missing? Why would Galvan let this happen? Is the brand disorganized? Is the brand endorsing this? Do you see the emotional chain reaction? A dress worn by Meghan turned into a question about Galvan's integrity. And here's the part that really shook Galvan's leadership. The negative sentiment wasn't coming from trolls or random online noise. It was coming from paying customers, loyal ones, the people who buy $1,700 dresses without blinking. This wasn't a cancellation. This was disappointment, which is far worse. Cancellation can fade. Disappointment sticks. And disappointment spreads among luxury customers faster than viral gossip. By mid-morning, Catherine ordered her team to pull real-time analytics. They projected them onto the wall of the conference room. And there it was, the live customer behavior dashboard, updating every 30 seconds, each metric a tiny wound on the brand's reputation. A sudden flurry of returns on past orders, a drop in newsletter engagement, a spike in people viewing competitor dresses with similar silhouettes, an uptick in Google searches for brands like Galvan. It was bleeding, quietly, subtly, but undeniably. Let me ask you directly. If you were the CEO, would you think this was still a coincidence? Or would you recognize it as the very thing every brand fears, an unintended, uncontrolled celebrity association causing reputational fallout? Because this wasn't a sales slump. It was a narrative crisis. And narrative crises are a luxury brand's worst nightmare. You can't brute force your way through them. You can't fix them with discounts or ads or cheerful Instagram posts. You can't PR spin your way out if the public sentiment is already sour. You have to contain the damage. Fast. Before it spreads. Before it becomes part of the brand's identity. Before investors start asking questions. And speaking of investors, by lunchtime, they did. Catherine received 2 texts and 1 email from board members expressing concern. One message said, "We're getting early signals of customer hesitancy." Another said, "Do we know why Meghan wore that dress?" And the most ominous one, "Do we anticipate continued decline?" If you've ever worked with investors, you know that's code for fix this yesterday. So Catherine made a decision. A decisive one. A necessary one. One that would set the tone for everything that happened next. She ordered the team to monitor the dress controversy hourly. She instructed PR to prepare contingency statements. She demanded internal audits of inventory. She requested a full review of the brand's public-facing messaging. And most importantly, she wanted to know the origins of that dress. Because until they knew exactly how Meghan acquired it, they couldn't control anything. Now here comes the twist, the emotional twist that made the crisis even heavier. Amid all the analytics, panic, and unanswered questions, a stylist reached out privately to someone inside Galvan. The stylist claimed to have information about the gown. Not gossip, not speculation. Information. Word traveled fast inside the headquarters. Within minutes, an internal message spread. A stylist has details about the dress. The energy in the building changed instantly. Tension sharpened. People leaned in. Even Catherine paused everything to take the call. Because what the stylist hinted at, just hinted, not yet confirmed, painted a picture far more chaotic than anyone expected. And that information? That whisper from a Hollywood insider? That single hint about how Meghan ended up in the dress. It was the missing puzzle piece Galvan needed. And feared. Because what the stylist shared was the first real clue. The first lead. The first narrative thread that could explain everything. The missing inventory, the unauthorized appearance, the sudden sales collapse. But the truth behind that hint, that would push this entire scandal into dangerous new territory. And what the stylist revealed next? Well, what came after this moment would change everything, and absolutely no one inside Galvan saw it coming. Have you ever seen a moment so shocking, so unexpected, that it freezes an entire room of professionals who are trained to stay calm under pressure? Because that's exactly what happened the second Catherine Holmgren hung up the phone with the stylist who claimed to know the truth about the infamous Galvan gown. The room didn't breathe. The team didn't move. It was as if the entire building was bracing itself for the impact of whatever revelation was coming next. And while that revelation was brewing in whispers and hushed side conversations, something else surfaced, something no one inside the company expected, a leaked internal memo. Not a memo written for the public. Not a memo crafted by PR experts. Not a memo meant to be seen outside the walls of Galvan London. A private memo. Short, tense, urgent. And it contained a single line that would blow the story wide open. "We did not approve this." Just 6 words. 6 words that hit the fashion industry like a slap across the face. 6 words that transformed a strange wardrobe mystery into a full-scale brand crisis. But before we get to that, let me take you back into the building at the exact moment this leak emerged, because understanding the emotional atmosphere is crucial to understanding the chaos that followed. After the call with the stylist, Catherine returned to the conference room. Her face had changed, not panicked, not angry, but tight. The look of someone who has just been handed information that explains everything and nothing at the same time. The team leaned in, waiting for the details. But before Catherine could even speak, her assistant rushed in, holding a phone, pale and wide-eyed. "Something's circulating online," she whispered. Everyone tensed. A memo, a screenshot, Galvan's logo at the top, a timestamp from early that morning, and the line, "We did not approve this." Now, here's the twist that made this revelation so explosive. No one in the room had leaked it. No one had even known it existed except for a handful of senior staff. It hadn't been published. It hadn't been emailed externally. It hadn't been shared beyond the internal crisis discussion. So how did it get out? That was the first question burning in everyone's minds. But the second question, the bigger one, was far more alarming. Who wanted it out there? Because this memo wasn't innocuous. It wasn't neutral. It wasn't a casual internal note. It was a statement. A statement that suggested Meghan's appearance in the gown was unauthorized. A statement that implied the brand was distancing itself. A statement that, if taken at face value, hinted that the rumors swirling online might not be entirely unfounded. And the public reacted instantly. Fashion commentators screen-capped it within minutes. Bloggers dissected it. Reddit threads exploded. Twitter feeds lit up. Fans of Meghan demand answers. Critics of Meghan smelled blood. Stylists began DMing each other, trying to confirm whether Galvan was preparing to make a formal announcement. The memo, in just a few short minutes, had gone from an internal note to the story. Let me ask you directly, do you understand how dangerous a leak like that is in the luxury industry? Because when a brand publicly, or even semi-publicly, implies that a celebrity wore something without permission, it signals a breakdown of the most sacred rule in fashion, controlled image. Luxury brands rely on quiet coordination, private conversations, behind-the-scenes approvals, stylists, PR agents, brand managers, all moving in sync. When a memo leaks saying, "We did not approve this," it doesn't just create scandal. It creates instability. It paints a picture of a brand that is scrambling, reacting, trying to regain control after something slipped through the cracks. And worse, it validates the internet's worst instincts. Suddenly, those accusations online, the stolen dress claims, the unauthorized usage discussions, the whispers about inventory discrepancies, all seemed more plausible. Not proven, but plausible. And in scandals, plausibility is often indistinguishable from truth. Inside the building, panic turned into alarm. Catherine demanded to know who had access to the memo. The IT manager dove into email logs. The HR director began reviewing internal accounts. The PR director was already drafting several possible statements, each dramatically different depending on how the situation evolved. But even as the team scrambled to locate the source of the leak, something deeper, more emotional was happening inside Catherine herself. Imagine being her. Imagine leading a brand known for sophistication and restraint, only to have your internal communications broadcast to millions within hours. Imagine watching your private crisis turn public before you even had the chance to finish assessing the damage. Imagine your brand's reputation being pulled out of your hands in real time. Wouldn't you feel that sinking, icy frustration? Wouldn't you feel betrayed? Wouldn't you feel exposed? Because that's exactly what happened. Now here's the contradiction that made everything worse. The memo wasn't aggressive. It wasn't a shot at Meghan. It wasn't a condemnation. It was simply a clarification meant for staff. A logistical reminder. A piece of internal housekeeping as the team navigated the crisis. But once it was leaked, its meaning transformed. People online interpreted it as anger. Some interpreted it as accusation. Some interpreted it as panic. Some even claimed Galvan was calling Meghan out. And the more interpretations spread, the more the memo grew teeth. Suddenly, journalists were calling Galvan's press office. Stylists were messaging senior employees, asking whether it was true. Retail partners were asking if they should prepare statements. Investors wanted clarity. Galvan was no longer reacting to a dress. They were reacting to a leak. Meanwhile, the stylist who had hinted at the truth behind the dress's origins had promised more details, but hadn't sent the full information yet. That meant the team was balancing two crises at once. The leaked memo. The incomplete information about how Meghan actually got the dress. That dual crisis, public and private, is what sent Catherine into her most decisive leadership state. Some CEOs crumble under pressure. Some lash out. Some outsource responsibility. But Catherine did something else. Something more intense. More instinctual. More surgical. She went into war room mode. She ordered every communication channel monitored. Every brand mention logged. Every customer message classified. Every influencer reaction tracked. Every stylist comment screenshot. She demanded hourly reports. She demanded the inventory audit be escalated. She demanded the stylist send the full details immediately. In that moment, she wasn't just a CEO. She was a strategist protecting her empire. But even the best strategist can't stop a leak once it's out. And the memo spread like wildfire. Some people online defended Galvan. Some attacked Meghan. Some attacked Galvan. Some spun conspiracies. And then came the worst interpretation of all, the one that caused the most emotional damage. Is Galvan accusing Meghan of stealing? That question, even though the memo didn't say that, became the dominant narrative. That's the danger of leaks. They're not contextual. They're not nuanced. They're not explained. They're raw, vulnerable, easily twisted. And when leaks involve celebrities with polarizing reputations, the twisting becomes inevitable. But the real explosion didn't happen because of the memo itself. It happened because of what arrived next. The continuation of the stylist's message. Because after hours of tension, waiting, and speculation, the stylist finally sent the follow-up. A message that explained exactly how Meghan acquired the dress. A message that revealed what happened behind the scenes. A message that connected the missing inventory, the unauthorized appearance, and the sudden sales drop. And that message came with something attached. A file. A photo. A blurry, grainy, badly framed, yet unmistakably incriminating photo. One that, according to the stylist, told the entire story. And what was in that photo? Well, what came next would change everything. And absolutely no one was prepared for the image they were about to see. Have you ever seen a single message land with so much weight that the moment it arrives, everyone in the room stops breathing? Because that's exactly what happened inside Galvan London when the stylist finally sent the follow-up message. It wasn't long, it wasn't emotional, it wasn't dramatic, but it carried the kind of quiet devastation that only truth, or what appears to be truth, can deliver. And alongside that message was the file. The photo. The image that would send the entire team into stunned silence and push this scandal into darker, more unpredictable territory. But before we get to the photo, and trust me, the photo is the part that made even the most seasoned Galvan employees sit down. We need to talk about the stylist. Because who this person was, how they found themselves pulled into the chaos, and why they chose to break rank is a story all its own. This wasn't a junior stylist desperate for attention. This wasn't a gossip-hungry assistant. This wasn't someone out for revenge. This was a veteran Hollywood stylist. Someone who had dressed A-listers, navigated the politics of red carpets, negotiated with luxury brands, and handled more celebrity egos than most people will ever meet in their lifetime. Someone who knew the rules, the unspoken agreements, the boundaries that separate a healthy professional relationship from a catastrophic PR event. Stylists like this don't talk. Not unless they have to. Not unless something has gone so far off the rails that silence becomes a betrayal of their own professionalism. And that's what made this revelation so shocking. Because when a veteran stylist breaks silence, you listen. The message they sent wasn't sensational. It was clinical, precise, almost painfully matter-of-fact. But the implications? Those were enormous. They began by confirming that the dress Meghan wore did not come from an official pull request. It wasn't loaned. It wasn't coordinated. It wasn't tracked through the usual channels. It didn't go through the hands of any stylist officially associated with Meghan's team. Instead, and this is where the contradictions start piling up, the stylist claimed that Meghan had obtained the dress through a private source, one that bypassed the traditional brand-to-stylist pipeline entirely. And if you know anything about luxury fashion, you know this is the exact nightmare scenario brands fear the most. An uncontrolled garment traveling quietly, invisibly, unpredictably from one pair of hands to another. Private sourcing happens. It's rare. It's frowned upon. But it happens. However, what the stylist said next made everyone in the conference room look at each other with the same stunned expression. According to this insider, the dress wasn't simply privately sourced. It was improperly sourced. Now pause for a moment and think about how explosive those two words are in the fashion world. Improperly sourced. They don't mean illegal, but they don't mean legitimate either. They occupy that murky, dangerous middle ground that brands never want to cross into because that territory is where rumors mutate into scandals, where whispers become headlines, where minor confusion morphs into reputational collapse. So what did improper mean in this context? The stylist elaborated, slowly, carefully, in a way that made the team's blood run cold. The dress, they claimed, was acquired after an event, a private gala. A dress that was meant to be returned to Galvan by the end of the evening. A dress that, according to the inventory sheet, never came back. A dress that staff assumed was misplaced by the host organization, not taken into private possession. And suddenly, all the puzzle pieces inside Galvan were starting to align, frighteningly so. The missing inventory, the internal confusion, the sudden disappearance of a gown never logged as sold, the absence of the dress in any stylist request, the memo saying the appearance wasn't approved. And now, the stylist's version of events filling in the gaps. The dress hadn't simply vanished. It had surfaced on Meghan, on Netflix, on a global promotional campaign. But this wasn't even the most shocking part. That came next. Because the stylist didn't just offer an explanation. They offered proof. That's where the attachment came in. The photo. A low-resolution, dimly lit backstage snapshot from the gala in question. The one where the dress was last seen. The image was crooked, taken hurriedly, the kind of photo someone captures without thinking it will ever matter. But blurry or not, the subject was unmistakable. A guest holding the dress, not over their arm, not in a garment bag, but gathered in their hands as if carrying it out. The stylist didn't claim the person was Meghan. They didn't attach names. They didn't point fingers. But the outline, the posture, the silhouette, it was enough to make several people in Galvan freeze. Enough to ignite suspicion. Enough to deepen the controversy. And the emotional shock of that moment cannot be overstated. Because suddenly, this wasn't just a gossip spiral. This wasn't just an online misunderstanding. This wasn't just a sales dip. It was evidence, or at least the possibility of evidence. That a dress that was supposed to stay within brand control had made its way into a celebrity promo without permission. Now imagine being inside that room. Imagine the breaths catching in throats. Imagine the glances exchanged, terrified, confused, stunned. Imagine the questions tumbling through every person's mind. Is this really her? Is this really the dress? Is this what actually happened? Do we investigate further, or do we pretend we never saw this? Let me ask you directly. If you were sitting in that room, what would you have done? Would you confront the stylist? Would you investigate the photo? Would you call legal counsel? Or would you quietly panic, knowing this could explode into something uncontrollable? Because Catherine Holmgren, the CEO, didn't react impulsively, didn't lash out, didn't yell. Instead, she did something far more unsettling. She went quiet, silent, focused, processing, calculating. You know the saying, still waters run deep. This was one of those moments. Her team watched her as she stared at the photo, not blinking, not breathing, not moving. And when she finally spoke, her voice was calm enough to scare them. She asked for the entire timeline of the dress's last known movements. She requested the original inventory sheet. She ordered a recheck of the garment's tracking number. She instructed the staff to search event logs from the gala. She wanted to know who packed up dresses at the end of the night. She wanted names. She wanted confirmations. She wanted clarity. Because one truth had crystallized for her. The brand wasn't dealing with a simple misunderstanding anymore. They were dealing with a chain of events that might involve mishandling, miscommunication, or worse. And the public was already forming its own version of the story. And as she looked around the room, she realized something even more dangerous. The narrative wasn't just out of their control. It was mutating. Every hour produced new speculation. Every new post added a new angle. Every mention created more noise. Someone in the room finally asked the question on everyone's mind. What exactly did the stylist say about how Meghan got the dress? Catherine read the message out loud. She received it through an intermediary at the event. It wasn't returned afterward. An intermediary. A vague word. A dangerous word. A word that turns questions into suspicions and suspicions into implications. And here's the emotional twist. The contradiction that turned this entire situation into something far bigger. The stylist claimed they weren't accusing Meghan of wrongdoing. They weren't alleging theft. They weren't pointing fingers. But by simply stating what they believed happened, they created a narrative no one could contain. Because if a dress was handed off quietly at an event, if a dress went missing, if a celebrity later appeared in that same dress without the brand's knowledge, what conclusion would the public draw? Even if the truth was harmless, even if it was all a misunderstanding, the perception alone was lethal. And perception is reality in the fashion world. But here's where the chaos began to escalate even further. Because after sending the message, the stylist sent one more line, a simple one, and it hit Galvan CEO harder than anything else. There's more you need to see. More messages, more proof, more details, another piece of the puzzle, another layer of the scandal, another revelation waiting to surface. And what the stylist sent next, what came after this moment would push Galvan's leadership past the point of frustration into full-blown crisis. And absolutely no one was prepared for the next thing that landed in Catherine's inbox. Have you ever seen an image so unsettling, so perfectly timed, so painfully incriminating, not because of what it shows, but because of what it suggests, that it instantly rewires everyone's understanding of a situation? That's the kind of image the stylist sent next. A second attachment. A photo that, according to insiders, stopped the entire Galvan London crisis team dead in their tracks. Not because it provided clarity, but because it added a new layer of confusion, suspicion, and urgency to a scandal already spiraling out of control. And here's the thing, it wasn't even a clear photo. Not high resolution. Not professionally taken. Not illuminated by perfect lighting or captured with intentional framing. It was messy, blurry, shadowed, awkwardly angled. A photo that looked like it was snapped quickly, quietly, maybe even secretly. The kind of picture someone takes when they're not supposed to be taking pictures at all. But sometimes, it's the messy photos that tell the most explosive stories. The attachment landed in Catherine Holmgren's inbox with a tiny digital thud, a single notification ping that echoed in the tense silence of the conference room. No one moved. No one spoke. No one even reached for coffee or adjusted their seat. They watched Catherine open the email with the kind of collective dread that only builds when everyone knows the next few seconds could change everything. She clicked the attachment. The screen enlarged it, and the room fell utterly silent. Because the photo didn't just show a dress. It showed a moment no luxury brand ever wants to see. The image appeared to have been taken backstage at the gala, dim lights, chaotic backdrop, clothing racks partially visible behind the subject. But in the center of the frame was the dress. The Galvan dress. The same silhouette, the same unmistakable fabric sheen, the same cut. This time, though, the dress wasn't being worn. It wasn't draped elegantly across a hanger. It wasn't being prepared for press photos or red carpets. Instead, it was being held in someone's hands, gathered loosely, sloppily, clutched in a way that looked hurried, almost secretive. The dress wasn't being admired. It was being moved. Now here's the twist. The emotional punch that left several staff members whispering, "No way," under their breath. The person holding the dress had their back to the camera, but the angle captured enough of their outline, posture, and hairstyle to create a dangerous resemblance. Not a confirmation, not a clear identity, but a resemblance. A silhouette familiar enough that everyone in the room felt their pulse quicken. And here's where the contradictions begin. Was it Meghan? Maybe. Possibly. Potentially. But the image wasn't sharp enough to confirm anything. Could it have been someone else? Absolutely. Definitely. Easily. But the resemblance was undeniable enough to fuel a narrative. The kind of narrative that the public, once it takes hold, refuses to let go of. And this is the horrifying truth every brand fears. People do not need clarity when they have suspicion. They do not need details when they have imagination. They do not need proof when they have a blurry photo that looks like something, Perception becomes reality, and reality becomes irrelevant. The team at Galvan stared at the screen as if the photo might suddenly change shape, clarify itself, reveal a name, an explanation, a timestamp, anything. But all it did was sit there, grainy, shadowed, ambiguous, daring anyone to say out loud what they were all thinking. Finally, one employee whispered what everyone feared. If this gets out, we're finished. Because imagine the headline. Photo surfaces of Meghan Markle holding unreturned $1,695 Galvan gown backstage at gala. Even if it wasn't her. Even if it was just a coincidence. Even if the truth was 1,000 miles away from that interpretation. The internet doesn't care about nuance. It cares about narrative. And this photo fed the most explosive narrative imaginable. But the real emotional blow came from what the stylist wrote beneath the image. This was taken moments before the dress disappeared. Moments before the dress disappeared. 6 words. 6 words that carried more weight than any accusations, any arguments, any explanations offered so far. Catherine's breath caught. Her fingers tightened on the edge of the table. Her expression transitioned from shock to calculation. Because this wasn't just speculation anymore. It was timeline confirmation. The dress went missing. Someone took it. Someone left with it. Someone bypassed standard procedures. Someone broke the chain of custody. And now, that same dress had reappeared on Meghan Markle in a Netflix promo months later. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences rarely look this suspicious. Catherine zoomed in on the photo. The pixels broke apart under enlargement. But the silhouette remained. Tall. Structured. Hair pulled back in a recognizable style. It wasn't proof, but it was enough to make her swallow hard. One staff member, voice shaking slightly, asked the million-dollar question. Should we assume the worst? Catherine didn't answer. Because assuming the worst meant acknowledging the possibility that a celebrity of Meghan's profile had obtained a dress in a manner that could devastate the brand's reputation if framed incorrectly, or even if framed correctly. Assuming the worst meant the brand could be forced into a public confrontation. Assuming the worst meant Galvan might be expected to issue a statement. Assuming the worst meant dealing with legal implications. Assuming the worst meant the story could explode globally. So instead of answering, she asked a question no one saw coming. Is this photo circulating anywhere else? The room erupted into motion. Phones came out. Laptops flipped open. Team members scrambled to check social platforms, forums, group chats, even shadowy gossip accounts that trade in half-truths. After several tense moments, the answer came. No, it's only in this email. The stylist hasn't sent it to anyone else. Relief washed over the room, briefly. But relief is fragile in a crisis. It never lasts long. Because the stylist's message didn't end there. Below the photo, they had written something else. Something that shifted the ground beneath Galvan's leadership in a way no one was prepared.